Hi, and my warm welcome everyone to this bonus episode of Sustainability Explored. 1 year ago, on this very day, 30th of May 2019, I released the first episode of what later became this amazing journey, adventurous, exciting, a super interesting journey called Sustainability Explored podcast. For those of you who are new, this will also serve, I guess, as an episode introduction of who I am, why I started, offer you a little bit of a context of the history of this podcast, what it does to me, how it changes my life, how it changed already the life of my small but mighty team, the listeners, hopefully. I'm very happy to share with you that some listeners finally started to engage with me on LinkedIn, to write me, to let me know they are listening, to ask questions, and so on. So, and those who are new, this is a podcast where we discover and explore different shapes of sustainability aspect in business and economy. For exactly a year, I interviewed people from across industries to see how sustainability is integrated in their operational processes, what it does to their business, if they're gaining, if they're losing, what's the competitive advantage, and so on. All the guests are very interesting. After you're done listening to this episode, I invite you cordially to go and check all the directory, I don't want to say archive, but the directory of episodes that is already out there for a year. It's a weekly show. New episodes are released every Thursday. And today I just want to celebrate, really. I just want to celebrate the year of podcasting. When I'm saying this, I still cannot believe that I made it to this point and that I was doing it consistently. So, I will be speaking off the cuff today. No speech is prepared, not even a celebratory speech is prepared, except for a short plan of what I want to share with you today. So we will start with a little bit of where we are today. How many countries are you guys coming from? The podcast is, as I always say, for its listeners. And after all, we're celebrating your interest in sustainability, your desire probably to learn something new, to become better, to become stronger in your professional field. And so we are celebrating you, a little bit of me, the creativity sparkle that I had, and also, to be completely honest with you, it was not even just me. But about everything we will talk in just a second. I will give you a plan of what I'm going to cover, and from there we will go. All right, so here we are. I will share with you, first of all, the plan of what I'm gonna cover. Let's call this parts of information chapters. After each chapter, I will include a little bit of a musical pause, very short ones, so you see where we are and how it breaks down. So I'd like to start with where we are now, what we have achieved with all of you so far in a year. I will name all the countries where you guys are listening from, top 3, top 5, top 10 countries. Then I will share with you who I interview. So I will offer you a bit of information about the guests, maybe again some interesting facts about them. After that, I will tell you how I find guests, how I communicate with them, and offer you, as I said in the beginning, a bit of a backstage. And then I will share why I started, my purpose, and a little bit about myself. So what makes me, I don't know if a good person to start a podcast, but what makes me a knowledgeable person to be sitting here and sharing my knowledge and offering a platform for the guests to share their knowledge, ideas, achievements also. Finally, the last part will be about questions. About 2 weeks ago, I posted on my page on LinkedIn and on Facebook, I prepared a post offering anyone who's interested in the matter to send me their questions, whether it's about podcasting, how to start, how to proceed, maybe about sustainability per se, maybe a career question, anything. And I have collected some questions. They are all very interesting. I will cover them all as promised. And I hope you will enjoy it, and it will give you some inspiration to do your own thing as well. So let's get it started. Right, so let's start with where we are now. 1 year ago, I started, so that was 30th of May 2019. Now we have 36 episodes, 23 of which are interviews. I interviewed 9 women and 14 men. At this very moment, I'm looking at the statistics that my hosting platform, Anchor, shows me. And from the beginning to now, the podcast was listened 5,110 times exactly. That's 5,110 real people listening to the podcast. My family does not listen to my podcast. Very few from my friends do so. So it makes me happy to know that it's all very organic and coming from authentic listeners. At the moment, the audience is 87 people. So more or less, this is the crowd that is always with me. Most of all, I am impressed by geographical distribution. I will be straightforward, honest with you. Somehow, and I cannot explain this success, 41% of the listeners of Sustainability Explored are coming from France, and then 17% from the US, 9% from Ukraine, where I am based. At some point, most of the listeners were coming, like 20% were coming from the US. And I'm a very active participant in Facebook groups related to podcast. We support each other. I tend to answer the questions, share my tips and tricks if I can, if it's relevant. And so at some point, someone asked, okay, where are your listeners mostly coming from? For me, that was US. And the author of the post came back to me in the comments saying, judging by your last name, where are you from? Where are you recording from? And why do you think it's the US? I say, well, I'm in Ukraine, but most of my guests at that moment were from the US. And also the language of the podcast is English. So my assumption is because of these two factors, the guests that share in their circles and the language. But now when I look at my statistics and 41% of listeners are coming from France, I cannot explain this at all, So anyway, if you are listening from France, give me a heads up. Please reach out on LinkedIn, send me a message. I would very much love to know who you are and to get connected, to know you in person. So as I said, country number 2 with 17% of audience is coming from the US, 9% Ukraine, understandable. The language can be a barrier. Also, the topic is unfortunately not so kind of widespread here, not so well understood. And that is, that's, by the way, one of the reasons why I started the podcast, is because I needed to learn myself. But we will get to that in the chapter number 3. Anyway, now I'm just gonna go through all the countries and give you all a heads up from the countries you're listening from. You listeners are those who I want to celebrate today. So 4%, the UK. Then another success that I cannot explain is Colombia. or 2% of the audience is coming from Colombia, and also 2% from Germany. But then, prepare for a ride. Ireland, Australia, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, United Arab Emirates, Poland, Spain, Austria, Singapore, Belgium, Italy, New Zealand, Cameroon, Brazil, India, Costa Rica, Sweden, Switzerland, Russia, Mauritius, Chile, Latvia, Egypt, Nigeria, Estonia, Norway, Serbia, Romania, Slovenia, Argentina, Malaysia, Macedonia, Portugal, Ecuador, Mexico, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Vietnam, Dominican Republic, Philippines, Monaco, Luxembourg, South Africa, Hong Kong, Hungary, Peru, Kenya, Turkey, Honduras, Morocco, Greece, Czechia, Kazakhstan, Thailand, South Korea, Indonesia, Finland, Albania, Venezuela, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Fiji, Croatia, Saudi Arabia, Turks and Caicos Islands. I literally had to Google where this is located. For the record, Caribbean Basin. Zimbabwe, Japan, Sri Lanka, Puerto Rico, Bulgaria, Montenegro, Israel, British Virgin Islands, and Cyprus. In total, I think I calculated about 80 countries. For the gender, females are listening to the podcast slightly more than males. So 57 versus 39, and 4% according to Spotify statistics decided not to specify, which is totally fine. Age-wise, most of the listeners, about 70%, are between 27 to 45 years old and 45 years old. So my public is very mature adults, and I hope know what they want from life and careers, professional life. So that's it about where we are at the moment, our stats, where we are all coming from. At this moment, I really want to congratulate you all and thank you really for being here with me every week, following this podcast, hopefully learning something new from me and the guest, connecting with the guests, connecting with me, those who have already taken this opportunity. It means a world to me, really. The way, just the matter of the fact that you are taking a moment of your time to write me a comment, to rate, to send me a private message on LinkedIn, this is so worth it. The doing this podcast for so long is so worth it because I have the audience. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Chapter 2, after a short break, about the guests, where I find them, what happens after that, and the whole process. Musical pause. Right, about my guests and where I find them. This is very much connected to where and why I started. So let's start in the chronological order. Last year, I was very much bored at my job. I didn't see I was bringing any value. The corporate world is tough, and if you are, a naive and clean soul like me, and you're really trying to make an impact, but big guys are doing what they have to do, not really looking in your direction, then you're gonna have a lot of problems. And that was my case. I was feeling like a black sheep all the time, and I felt like I needed to find some exit to my creativity. I was already going through journal before my professional life started. I was going through some journalist workshops. Once I did a radio workshop, and I wanted to work on the radio. And then, one day I just realized, why am I always asking for permission? Who is even supposed to give me this permission? So I thought about trying to let this creativity out. and of course connected with my professional life. I was already writing a blog. You can find it on Medium under the same name, Sustainability Explored. Right now we are putting out the transcripts of the episodes. We're going as fast as we can, but we're always 12 episodes behind. Nevertheless, if you go really back in history, you will see the short articles I started with, and but writing did not allow me to expand on the topic, to go broad, while the podcast as a speaking form really allows for more, go into the edges, not just staying in the core, be very concise, be very specific about the topic, but to take these turns sometimes. So I started with actually documenting myself. Since I was working at the bank, establishing the environmental and social management system for the lending process, and this is not something that is very much widespread in Ukraine. I know that US, France, the UK, they have this already in the banking systems established. Here it's still something new. So I felt like every time I met a new person that became colleagues of mine that were later on in my team, I really had to explain everything from the beginning. Okay, this is how I wrote the policy, this is how I approached this task, that task, this is what I read, these are the standards, and so on and so forth. And I understood that I cannot repeat it, too many times. I wrote articles, but then I realized that people were not really reading them. So I decided to document myself, and going back in the history of this podcast, the first 10 episodes are really me documenting the process of establishing this environmental and social management system. If you listen to those episodes, you will most probably be able to replicate the system where you are in any country. If you still have the questions, any questions after that, well, as always, I invite you to reach out to me and discuss it with me. I love this form of engaging with people and communicating and really solving real life problems. I know it's helpful, so I will gladly offer you my hand, my professional, helpful hand, I hope. Right, so the first 10 episodes were for me to document myself. Back then, I really didn't think I will get that far and that I will ever be recording this episode of today, celebrating the first anniversary of this marvelous journey. Then what happened after that is that I learned about a methodology called 12 weeks year. Some people also call it 100 days, which is practically the same. The point is that instead of planning for 1 year that is long and no one knows what's going to happen in September when you are planning your year in December, late December. So in order to get focused, your year gets compressed into 3 months. I really felt like I was not progressing as fast as I wanted. I was not learning as many things as I felt I could. I felt a lot more potential than I was using professionally, personally, as a human being. So I decided to plan my first 12 weeks. That was last summer. And, you set 1 or maximum 2 goals, and during those 3 months or 12 weeks, you plan to achieve it. I learned that if every week I had a very specific task, which also served me as a topic of the week, I was able to achieve a lot more than in my regular routine, slow fashion. So last summer, for the first 12 weeks of my experiment, every week I had a topic of something related to something that I knew either little about or almost nothing about. And for a week I was reading and reading and reading very actively, almost aggressively, I would even say. At the end of every week, my goal was to produce an article. So I started to write those articles for my blog, and that's how I realized that, wait a second, maybe I can use those articles as a basis for my future podcast episodes after, of course, I have already documented myself. And I remember the moment when I was reading something, retransforming those reads into very concentrated piece of writing of myself, so that, very practical, applicable sets of tips. And I still had some questions left. So what I started to do is I started to approach people from those industries that I was researching about. The first was Green Office in the academia, and I found Tim Strasser, not the CEO, but anyway, one of the top heads of that student organization that started Green Office movement at the Maastricht University. That's how I started to invite people for the interviews. I read an article, some names, some interesting initiatives. Let me find those names on LinkedIn and approach people with my idea about interviewing them on a podcast. This is exactly how I started to do the interviews. And honestly, in the beginning, again, I did not plan to do it as a podcast, as something for the audience. I really didn't think anyone would be interested in listening to me, and I didn't see how people could find me, for that matter. To find the podcast done by me, imposter syndrome was blooming, of course. So the first 10 episodes I documented myself, and then based on the topic of my research, that was, self-imposed on myself topics for every week, I started to interview people from those areas of expertise. And this is how the podcast progressed. So I was learning, basically, I invented this only for myself. And then I saw the value it was bringing other people. So that's how it went. For the guests, how I approach this, I either find the topic and then I read a lot about on the topic and find the names in the articles that are interesting, and then I find them on LinkedIn. Or option number 2 for me, I research LinkedIn specifically for the names, I go through the profiles, and this is most probably how I met most of my guests, except for one interview that out of those 23 so far, only one interview was made with my classmate. That was Terryang, and probably Terryang on urban sustainability in Singapore. And probably, at least I felt, probably the listeners, you guys also felt the difference in the mood. I usually am very, was it anxious, nervous? I even, honestly, I try not to breathe when I'm interviewing someone. With Terryang, the conversation went, in a much friendlier way from the beginning, because I already knew him. We were neighbors in the student residence where we both studied in Poitiers, because we studied on the same program in European Masters in Applied Ecology. That was Erasmus Mundus Masters. that I did from 2012 to 2015. And Young, a big friend of mine, we are a very friendly group all together. I love these people. I love this crowd. I love speaking to them. And what is it, 6 years after the graduation, we're still practically all in touch. 20 people we get together still. Anyway, so there was this episode with Young, and that was the only guest I knew before in real life for among all the guests. All the rest I found either via LinkedIn or via reading the articles like on Guardian, on Forbes, and so on. Yeah, another thing I wanted to share, if we are talking about this full transparency, is that I always share my questions in advance. As I always say to my guests, don't worry, no one expects you to have any prior experience with podcasting, with interviews. Just be yourself. And important, this is not an exam. The point is not to find your weak spots or what you don't know, or find how to bury you, in front of the whole world. No, absolutely not. The point is to have an informative, engaging, and interesting conversation. And of course, the biggest point is to learn something new. For me, because I am the primary contact, I am the person who is primarily interested in the subject and in the guest, and to share all of those findings, knowledge, interesting tips with the listeners. In chapter 1, I already said 81 country. The listeners are based in 81 countries globally. So yes, the point is to have this very organic conversation like we have with friends and family, but to have a point, to keep in mind in focus what we are discussing and what we are trying to achieve with every episode. I try to keep, so the questions are always sent in advance, and I really think it's a good thing. The only time I did not do it was the interview with Ron Gonen. The episode is called, and you can get back to it after you're done with this episode. The episode is called Impact Investment and Circular Economy with Ron Gonen from Closed Loop Partners. Either I didn't have time or I didn't think it was important, even though this is a guest of a high caliber. It's a high-end guest. I was very anxious, very nervous, because I had to interview him. I wanted to, but at the same time, I was stopping myself mentally. Who do you think you are? What are you doing? And I was secretly hoping that he will say no, but he said yes, luckily for everyone. Anyway, I didn't have my questions prepared, and the level of stress I experienced was enormous. It's also one of the shortest interviews, 23 minutes altogether with my intro and outro, because I was just throwing whatever question I had in my head super quickly, and Ron was answering off the top of his head without any preparation. So that's why it was very, very brief. Anyway, now I learned my lesson. I always send these questions in advance. We never rehearse, of course not, but just sharing 5 to 7 questions with guests so that they can see where the conversation will be going. Now I'm also editing them. So I have an editor. The team consists of 2 people, myself, that you already know, and another Anna. Anna that I know for, scary to say, 9 years now. We met when we were both working in stage management, so in events industry. We met in Ashgabat in Turkmenistan, the capital of Turkmenistan, when we both were doing the show for the 20th anniversary of independence of Turkmenistan. That's important. And now a colleague of mine is helping me doing this audio editing. She is also responsible for transcripts. So everything that you're reading on Medium, under the same name, again, Sustainability Explored, with all the active links to everything the guests mention, everything that might interest you, book recommendations, movie recommendations, anything. That's all her big work. Another thing she's helping me with is pieces of micro content. I post on my Facebook and LinkedIn page, I post quotes and posters with the guests. So she's helping me with that too. And, we're joking that it's still stage management. We both are doing stage management, but online. Our events are happening every week. It's just the same, one difference is that we are no longer at the field of play, but online, in the online medium. So that's a bit about the team. What else? So we are doing transcripts, audios. Before that, I was releasing my episodes unedited. And about the plans, I honestly promise you that I will improve the audio quality with the start of our year number 2, because I realized I am in this game for a long time. I really take it seriously. I am committed. I'm here for a while. It's not a game for me. It's not even a hobby. I cannot call it a hobby. And yet, it's not a job. It's not a work. It's not a chore for me. So I will improve the quality of audio, of the sound. And I will make you happy with some other episodes. Right, so I started it to document myself, then I started to interview. You already know how. I didn't have my end goal in mind when I started. And because it changed at least twice or 3 times during this path, during this year while I was doing it, now I am at the moment where, yes, I acknowledge I didn't know where I will be in a year, if I would be anywhere with the podcast. But at this very moment of time, to be completely honest with you all, I cannot imagine my life without this podcast. I cannot see my days without doing at least something every day for this podcast. Be it searching for guests, contacting them on LinkedIn, preparing the questions, setting up the date and time of our interviews. All of them, by the way, are happening remote. Not a single interview I had recorded in person. That's just the way it is at the moment. Or following up with guests, or setting up the system of recording, editing, creating pieces of micro content. I am not paid for it. That's another transparency point. A friend of mine, Vladi, he asked me, are you at least monetizing them somehow, the podcasts, the episodes? Honestly, no. And it is not in my plans to include any ads or sponsorships in the podcast. And this is a principal position. I'm speaking not from the point, not from the, what is it called? Not because I'm miserable and I cannot get any ads, but because I took this conscious decision to not put any irrelevant or even relevant ads into the episodes. To make a decent living out of this, you probably, if you're not a Joe Rogan, you will need to put at least 3 ads in the episode, and I cannot see myself doing that. Promoting irrelevant stuff for some people who paid something. Not for me. Also, I don't like ads when I'm listening to something or watching something, be it YouTube or anything else. And I think a lot of people will share the same feeling. Ads is something that I do not want to have on my podcast. So if you're one of the regular listeners, you have already noticed there is nothing extra added to the episodes, and it honestly makes me very proud. You get edited, juicy content during the interview. In my outro, I always try to add something or suggest other related to the topic episodes to listen to. But I don't want to break it, to interrupt the speech of the guest, to interrupt our conversation with, wear these socks or buy these building materials, or I don't know, anything of this sort. So no, I'm not going to place ads. I'm not planning to monetize the podcast. There is a way to leave a donation, but of course there is no pressure, and I haven't received any donation so far. I am still planning to work in my professional field, which is environment, sustainability, social stuff, environmental and social auditing, monitoring, strategy writing, plans writing, checklists, and so on. In real industries, in real life. So the podcast will not be monetized, and this is this is my position. So what else? I covered why I started the team, my purpose, my goal. I want to thank a lot the guests who accepted this invitation to be interviewed on my podcast, especially those guests that were in the very beginning, like Lincoln Blevins. Not only I didn't have anything to show back then in terms of previous works or previous episodes, he still accepted, but also he directed me, he put me in touch with some other extraordinary guests like Laura Tannenbaum, former climate science communicator from NASA. And we had a great, brilliant interview with her. But all the other guests too, everyone who believed in the cause. I didn't have to pay anyone. No one paid me to be interviewed or anything like that. If in case, this situation probably can happen, you will always know. Transparency is one of my core values. I am very much pro transparency. So I will always say if there are cases like that. But so far, no, I didn't have to pay anyone. No one paid me to be interviewed, to interview anyone. So this whole podcast is based on free will and attracts people who are like me, who want to share, who want to be helpful, who want to bring something to this world and be helpful, be relevant, be valuable, and all of this is shared for free and for you to listen and find inspiration, application in your life. I can see how it helps me, how everything is really interconnected. It makes me very happy. I cannot imagine my life without this podcast anymore. Basically, I think I covered everything I wanted. Why I started the team. Here I would also love to thank my boyfriend, whose idea it actually was to, on top of writing for the blog, also allow myself some other format. And that's how podcast was really born. He had to plan this idea in my head for, honestly, 6 months. Half a year he was asking me once in a while here and there, so are you doing the podcast? Have you considered this idea? And maybe you need me to help you to start. I don't know. So it was really his idea, which I am very grateful for today. Yeah, maybe another thing I would like to share. I remember one day So in November 2018, I was applying for Berkeley, University of Berkeley Environmental Leaders Program. If anyone wants to check this out, please do so. It seemed to me that it was a great program. Quite expensive though, $8,000 for 3 weeks training. So I was applying for this program for the first time, and I didn't get the scholarship. Then I got partial scholarship. But anyway, at some point I approached them because they opened another window for a very specific type of candidates, which I believed I was, and I really was. Anyway, one day I just received an email from them saying, we don't see how you are the perfect candidate. And by the time I reached home, I read it, I arrived home. By the time I climbed to my 5th floor, I was all in tears. He met me at the door and said, what happened? What really happened to you? And I cried my eyes out. I said, they don't see how I am a good fit, how I am a good candidate for that scholarship. And it made me very sad. It made me even angry at some point. But then I started moving because I realized that I have to be different. I have to be different in some way to be that candidate that the University of Berkeley will want to see in their program. And that was an event that really hurt me, and at the same time started me and this podcast. And honestly, I see the overwhelming positive response from the listeners, from all of you guys, from anyone who's taken a moment, which I appreciate so much, taken a moment to write a comment on our Podchaser page, leave a comment, rate, leave something, leave a mark to say, hey, I listened and I liked it, or I didn't like it. Honestly, I didn't have any hate comment throughout the year, which is surprising. But that's the fact. I really appreciate anyone who is approaching me on LinkedIn, in private messages, in comments. Really, you don't imagine what kind of what it means to me. It really means a world to me. So thank you all. Today is about celebrating you, celebrating the podcast, celebrating the platform that gave guests, established professionals in the field of sustainability, corporate social responsibility, environment, what else? Circular economy, green economy. The platform gave them the place to express their ideas in the form of interview, and it also connects us all in a way globally. Podcast is a little bit of an intimate experience. Just now I'm sitting in my room talking to all of you, and I don't even know who, from where, and when will really listen to me. So that's amazing. That's the magic. Fine. I've been talking for slightly more than half an hour now. I would like to get to the last part of this episode, not to bore anyone. This is also another reason why the podcast is released weekly and not more often, is because I don't want to overwhelm the listeners, all of you, and also myself. I feel like once a week is enough, and 30 to 45 minutes is also more than enough. So, questions. I received a couple of questions, and honestly, again, I'm glad, as I was sharing with you, I always share my questions in advance. I'm glad I collected these questions in advance because they really made me think a lot. So we'll start with question number 1. It came from a friend of mine, Andrew Itsu, and he says, I am amazed. Where are you getting so much motivation to perform like this? But this is not a very concrete question. That's fine. And I promised to answer all the questions inside of the episode. So Where do I get the motivation? To be honest, at first it felt like a chore, really. In the beginning of this year, I decided in January that I will do this show consistently every week. So no matter what, I'm dead, I'm sick, I am in business trip, no one knew that COVID-19 will happen, so anything, I was planning to live my regular life and yet to keep this podcast going because I already saw what it gives me in the first place, what it gives to people, first to share their views if we're talking about the guests, to the listeners that are really literally learning something. I know it for a fact from the podcast. So last year I could say, even though I tried to stay consistent, it was still sort of a trial for me. You try, you test, and you see if it's your field, if it's your sea or not. This year I decided to be consistent. And in the beginning, when nothing was ready, it felt hard. It was very hard to be doing something every day. I remember I spent one whole day just contacting the potential guests, and like maybe 30% only just responded, out of which maybe 20% said yes and we actually recorded something. But I remember a good working day, like 9 hours. I was just looking for guests, just contacting them, and it's not like writing 5 lines of a message. It's really going deeply into their profiles, checking their email, the websites of their companies, and so on. So yes, there was a moment of time when it was hard and I was not really motivated. I think what helped me was the fact that I already saw the impact on my life. But once I started to have the ball rolling like I have it now, so now this is the system, now I have help, now I see it's really working, now I see people are joining in from everywhere in the world, sharing, commenting, the guests between themselves connect on LinkedIn and continue talking and continue searching for solutions that they will apply in real life. That's what matters to me. So once I have this ball rolling, the motivation is obvious and performance is organic. So it stopped being a hard thing for me to do, a chore. And I really learned to swim in the sea. I really learned to find joy in every day. And this is something I try to apply not only for the podcast, but for life. Nothing's gonna get easier. We will still have our deadlines at work, anywhere else. We will have more responsibilities and so on and so forth. But you can help yourself by learning to swim in the sea and enjoying the process, not just the end goal. So yeah, if in January I had to tell myself just one more email, sit just for 15 minutes, do something, do one step. Now I'm doing it naturally because I learned to love the process, and I really love the process now, and I cannot stop. I cannot imagine my life without this podcast, without this journey anymore. So I hope this helps you. This answers your question. Nmamdi Chadi Kobi from Nigeria. We are connections on LinkedIn, and Nmamdi from Nigeria asks me, are you achieving the purpose for which your program was initiated? That's number one question. And then, what are the major challenges and how are you able to overcome them? Am I achieving the purpose? Since the purpose changed many times, at least 3 times throughout the year, it was initiated to find a person who would replace me at my previous job and take from there. So it achieved the goal number 1, documenting myself in the first 10 episodes, and I hope it helped that person. So far I know that he's doing pretty well. And then the purpose changed too. Yes. So now it is the connection platform for the guests and the listeners. And I see it's really working because I rely upon your feedback. So I'd say, yeah, there was no clear purpose though. Yeah, to be honest, there was no clear purpose, but now there is, and I think I'm achieving it. What are the major challenges and how are you able to overcome them? The major challenge is consistency. People often ask me how to start. That's the wrong question to start with. Basically, if you ask yourself the right question, you will be able to get the right answer or to get closer to your answer. To start is not hard. You just start. You just, write a script and from there you go. You can always record your talk. What is hard is to keep the ball rolling, is to be consistent. And for me, what helps me, how I overcome this challenge, is my 12 weeks plan, where every week has its purpose. You can, assign a name, a title to the week, and you will always see how you perform. So consistency for me is achieved by always seeing where I am. And for me, that's 12 weeks plan. Lee Chambers, my distinguished guest from one of the recent episodes called Wellbeing, Health and Environmental Psychology with Lee Chambers, based in the UK. Lee says, "Congratulations, Anna. My question is, what will Sustainability Explored have evolved into by 2030? And secondly, what is the one powerful question that is not being asked at global level that would make the largest impact on your mission?" Lee, you're asking me 2 hard questions. Have some mercy. I was not that cruel to you. When I was thinking about question number 1, how will Sustainability Explored podcast evolve by 2030? So in 10 years, what will it look like? I was thinking about it, and I realized that I don't have a dream. I am stuck in a way in my consistency thing, in my 12 weeks plans, where everything is written down, achieved, and so on. And that's how I progress one step at a time. But I don't see my bigger dream. And only yesterday night, to be honest, I understood that it would be great for me to have my podcast included into some educational system, science or sustainability or something. It would be cool. I don't really trust numbers and stats. For example, this week I realized Sustainability Explored was number 88 in Apple Podcasts in Romania in business category, and number 78 or 74 in Latvia in also Apple Podcasts in the category Society and Culture. There is not even a category, natural sciences or nature or sustainability or something. So I am competing really with society and culture and business, which is huge, which is market and sales, PR probably as well, and so on. So really, there is not even category in which I could become, let's say, number one. I think it would be a very obvious answer. To become number one in some chart, in some country, in something. But this is also, it's like a river. It's changing so fast. Next week, I don't know where we will be in the charts, but and it doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter. What I realized would be a super high goal to reach to is to be recognized as an educational tool and to be included in some alternative education program. That would be awesome, I think. But your question number 2 is crazy. What is the most powerful question that is not being asked at global level that would make the largest impact on your mission? Are we not bullshitting each other? Are the methods and metrics that we have are really working, honestly? But when I'm thinking about anything on the global level and largest impact, the only thing I want everyone to do is to stop everything and go to the episode with Ralph Term, my personal role model in sustainability, and check the episode called Green, Inclusive and Open Economy with Ralph Term. If it's hard, it might be very hard to understand in the beginning if you're just listening to it. The transcript is ready on Medium, on Sustainability Explored page on Medium. And yeah, he will offer you a sneak peek at that global level, kind of open the curtain for you to... I'm still exploring everything that Ralph said and he does. And the powerful question that is not being asked is probably more a question to Ralph, because I am still, I still don't know. I don't know. But I will keep thinking about it. Maybe we will get there. And I will let you know, I promise. The next question came from Patricio Gonzalez Morel from New York, US. He says, I have only heard one of your podcasts, so I'm not sure if I could make any suggestions on what to include in your anniversary episode. I'm not sure if you have ever explored this, but one of the topics that fascinates me is why it is so difficult to have businesses take advantage of the sustainability, low-hanging fruits that abound their operations. For example, it is often easier to convince a hotel to cover its rooftops with solar panels, a measure that is expensive, disruptive, and that yields only modest energy gains, than to get it to implement this simple, low-cost, and highly profitable small technical and operational tweaks that can cut its utility consumption and cost by more than 25% almost overnight. Although these low-hanging fruits yield ROIs, return on investments, greater than 500%, they somehow are less appealing in the eyes of hoteliers than solar panels with their ROIs or less than 10%. I would love to hear someone explain how it is possible for so many businesses to be operated in such an illogical and crazy fashion. Patricio, the only thing I can tell you is that I'm on it. I will find someone for the episode that will explain exactly this. Why businesses opt in for certain solutions and not other. Rai Russell, a friend of mine that became my friend, that connected me with Gretchen, and we had a very cool episode on sustainable cannabis. Really, that was for me an episode of really stepping out of my comfort zone and talking about the subject that I know zero about, And Rai was someone I found, by the way, on in those podcast groups on Facebook. So Rai says, I would probably like to hear and learn about the negative effects of petroleum-based plastics and some solutions. Again, yeah, right. Will not cover it today because I don't know, but I will find. No, I know who I will interview about plastics and the solutions related to plastic problem. I agree, it's a present problem of nowadays, and I think I will invite for this episode one of my beloved classmates, Dilana Mihailova, who is now currently working in the UK, in Cambridge, if I'm not mistaken, in the plastic-related fighting solution related NGO. That's all about the questions. I covered everything I wanted, more or less. If you have still any questions, anyone who's listening, if you want to get in touch, please do so. Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook. I still prefer LinkedIn. Ask me your questions. I'm sure we can have fruitful conversation. That's it for today. This was the birthday episode of the podcast Sustainability Explored. Musical pause and closing remarks. Wow, I've been talking by myself for already more than an hour. So, guys, not to keep you any longer, that was it. That was the bonus anniversary, first anniversary of Sustainability Explored episode. This is to celebrate all of you, to celebrate all of us, to celebrate this platform and everything that is happening here due to the guests and its listeners. This is for you. This is for you to learn wherever you are. If I inspire you as a podcaster, as a sustainability professional, that makes me a very happy person, honestly. And I am glad I can bring this value to the world. If it's a small action I'm doing every day that ends up in one episode every week, that's amazing. That's more than enough for me. Yes, we're off to new heights, new episodes, new season. Again, season 4 that is starting next Thursday. That is June 4. Will bring us more exciting guests, more exciting topics. I can already tell you that the season will be very much nature-centered. We will be talking about biophilia, biomimicry, islands, climate change, biodiversity in Costa Rica, in Mexico. And yeah, I already have the 4 upcoming episodes and they are all amazing. So stay tuned, stay educated, listen to the podcast and share with me what you want and can share. Also rate, comment, as always, that I always and will never be tired of inviting you to do. Please send us some signs, the signs that you're there, that you're listening. That's really all I can ask for. So no need to send any donations, no need to be afraid of any ads here. Pure content, only sustainability, only thriving for the planet, for the people, and moving forward. Viva Sustainability Explored! Anyway, happy Saturday, everyone, or any other day of the week you're listening on. Stay tuned, stay healthy, stay safe, and take care. Until next time. Ciao, ciao. It was lovely talking to you today.